times. He started chewing his food. He did experiments with all sorts of chewing amounts, but settled on 150 as optimal for his circumstances. Most of his friends thought him crazy, but 2 did not, and they chewed with him. Of the 32 ship's crewmates he was imprisoned with, only 3 survived. And it was the people who had chewed their food. Lino was imprisoned at 17 years old, trying to escape former Yugoslavia. He was imprisoned for over a year and chewed just like his father did. He also closed his eyes, sent his energy deeper into himself, because he's a little bit woo-woo-wah-wah. And although he was living on starvation rations for a teenage man, he survived, to this day, with gusto. So chewing literally saved the lives of his family. Now, I am 20-something years old, 1993, at the Kushi Institute, meet this man, hear this story, and I'm sitting in the chapel of the Kushi Institute starting to chew my food. And I have a whole history of an eating disorder. I have like a rich girl's concentration camp. You know, my own personal hell. And what I found after I chewed my food 50 to 100 times a mouthful was that for the first time in my entire life, I felt satisfied. Now, if you don't know what that feels like, try chewing. If you think you know what it feels like, you still might not. Because to take a carbohydrate and actually reduce it to its component parts and actually let the glucose go up into your brain and bathe your brain in glucose is something beyond what we describe as satisfaction. We feel satisfied when our stomachs are full, correct? Is that not how we think of satisfaction? And in fact, we have this weird thought in this life, in this, you know, I love it when science doesn't understand something or doesn't know it and they just make stuff up. Like, oh, sorry ladies, your hips are too small to birth your babies, it's gonna be painful. That's baloney. When we say to people, it takes 20 minutes for your brain to register that you've eaten. What? 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 Like, if I kick you, it takes 20 minutes to register that I kicked you? We have no other function that has like a delayed response like that. In fact, if I drink alcohol, it doesn't take 20 minutes to register satisfaction because there's very instantly available calories in the alcohol and they hit my brain quickly. And I feel it quickly. The issue is that it takes 20 minutes for our digestive enzymes down here to break sugar, to break carbohydrates up, to send glucose to the brain. But if you chew that carbohydrate in your mouth, you will feel the glucose to the brain instantly. So the 20-minute delay is because you're not using your mouth. You fired your secretary. Anyway. That's thing number one, is that I was feeling incredibly satisfied. Now for somebody with an eating disorder, the satisfaction is very important. Because previous to that, as soon as I finished breakfast, all I thought about was lunch. And as soon as I finished lunch, all I thought about was dinner. Now for the first time in my life, I'd finish breakfast and just do stuff. And pay attention to life. And pay attention to what was in front of me. So for anyone who wrestles with this, who thinks like, oh, I think about food because of my childhood. I think about food because I'm stressed out. No, 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 no. You think about food because none of the glucose you're taking in is making it to your brain. Because as soon as the brain gets the glucose, it's fine. It shuts up and just does the next thing. I want to, in fact, do a picture of a very attractive man and his brain. Here's his intestines, equally attractive. And here's his mouth. Stomach. So your brain requires more glucose than any organ in your body. And it is difficult to get enough glucose to the brain to produce satisfaction without chewing. Therefore, you will overeat. Therefore, you will eat things like a Snickers bar because it has readily and quickly available glucose. And for people on this diet, if you are going to have the will, the means, the time, the resource, and the compassion to follow a whole foods, plant-based diet, you must break down the, what are they called? The carbohydrates. Polysaccharides. You must break down the polysaccharides. What this means is you have carbohydrates that are multiple long chain molecules making up that carbohydrate. And you have to literally bust them apart in order to get the sugar out of them. If you have a disaccharide or a monosaccharide, which is 2 molecules of sugar, or 1, that's easy peasy. That's like pouring maple syrup down your throat. But if your polysaccharide is coming in the form of a green bean, the only way to get at the sugar in the green bean is not only to mash it, but to apply amylase to it. Now, amylase is the principal digestive enzyme that comes out in your mouth, and it doesn't come out anywhere else in your GI tract quite like it comes out in your mouth. So if you don't apply the amylase here, it's not coming out in your stomach that much, and it only comes out secondarily in your small intestine, and by that time, you know, you've eaten the Snickers bar. So you can take this, and it goes straight to the brain, or you can take this and take your 20-minute ride. And by the way, you're going to eat twice as many green beans as you need to, because you're not going to feel satisfied as you're doing them in order to get there. And even then, you won't feel that satisfied. So, here I am, I just discovered chewing. I go to Peru with my boyfriend at the time. He's also a macrobiotic chef. And because I've wrestled with eating disorder, I'm really afraid of spending 6 weeks in a South American country where I won't have my support system. So I make a decision to chew every single mouthful 100 times, no matter what I'm eating, even if what I'm eating is an Oreo cookie. And believe me, after living in a macrobiotic commune for 4 years, an Oreo cookie sounds like the devil. But I was like, doesn't matter what I'm eating, I can be in the middle of the jungle, I don't care, I'm going to chew it 100 times. Luckily, my boyfriend got it, because he had been to the Kushi Institute with me. And I was true to my word. I chewed every single mouthful 100 times, and what it meant was that every single moment of that trip was like a crystalline Buddhist lotus flower. Because chewing brings you totally into the moment. I don't know, I can't really explain how that works, except that we are in the moment all the time. It's the only place we ever are. So all this baloney, our mind goes over here and back there and cruising around into our worries and our fears and hangs on to all these problems in our aura, like what am I going to do about that? What am I going to do about that? What am I going to do about that? What about my kid? What happens if my kid doesn't succeed? All of that goes away. Meanwhile, my boyfriend, who wasn't chewing at all, had like Montezuma's Revenge 3 times. He was like pooping all over South America. He was miserable, he was complaining all the time. I was fine, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Problems would come and go, which was like, hey, we just deal with it. Mentally, I was completely absorbing the experience like my brain was made of crystal. And I'm not exaggerating. So,
True meditation.
It is a meditation of sorts. And you know what? People who already meditate, people who already do yoga, I say you have to try chewing because you're already addicted to this high. You just don't really know when you're going to get it. You know when you go to yoga class and you're like, I didn't get that feeling. Like I never got that feeling. Well, chew half a cup of brown rice an hour before the class and you'll have that feeling from beginning to end. There is a spiritual seminar at the Kushi Institute where people come, it's like 10 people at a time, and Michio Kushi would teach it, you know, these huge thoughts that he's bringing to the audience. But it was the law of a spiritual seminar that you had to chew every mouthful 200 times. Like that was the thing. That was part of the contract of taking it. And they would eat incredibly clean food, so very little oil, very little seasoning. And these people would walk out of the dining room, because I would be working at the Kushi Institute at the time, I'm not chewing, I mean I was chewing a little, but they'd be walking around like just like floaty ballerina people. Because also when you chew, you're incredibly coordinated in your body. We'll go into that in a second. Okay, I used to do chewathons, I started a chewathon on Facebook, I do something called Tuesday. But let's go back to the beginning of this. Lino was not the first person on the chewing track. Anyone here know who the big American chewer was in the early 20th century? Chusky. Really sorry.
Good one.
Horace Fletcher. Horace Fletcher was a dude who was around like when the Kellogg's were around. Early 20th century, he lived from 1849 to 1919. He was an American health food enthusiast of the Victorian era who earned the nickname the Great Masticator. He argued that food should be chewed 32 times, or about 100 times a minute before being swallowed. He said, nature will castigate those who don't masticate. He made elaborate justifications for this claim. He promoted his theories for decades on lecture circuits and became a millionaire. Upton Sinclair, Henry James, and John D. Rockefeller were among those who gave his ideas a try. Henry James and Mark Twain were visitors to his palazzo in Venice. If you have a grandmother who told you to chew, she may have been influenced by Fletcher. It was called Fletcherism. And he wrote a book, Fletcherism, What It Is or How I Became Young at 60. And it's available on Amazon. You can get it on your Kindle. So chewing was the big trend in food in this country before calorie counting. The thing that sort of kicked it off the map was the idea of calories. Although many people believe Fletcher's laboratory reports, the more important eye-opener to doctors and laymen was his series of experiments in the Payne-Whitney Gymnasium at Yale University. It was here that he participated at the age of 58 in vigorous tests of strength and endurance versus the college athletes. He claimed to lift 300 pounds dead weight 350 times with his right calf. That's so specific. You know? But he did it. The interesting thing about Fletcher is that he called this part of your body, and I love this. It's like his word for the secretary. These 3 inches, he called them the 3 inches of personal responsibility. Because think about it. Once food is passed here, do you have any control over it? No. You are at the whim and mercy of the digestive enzymes secreted at the top of the stomach, the bottom of the stomach, the small intestine, and that's it. And if it's gone down like big rocks, like Fred Flintstone rocks, what happens down here? This is where you get gassy, you get pain, you get indigestion, it doesn't feel good, you're burping. But if you take the 3 inches of personal responsibility, not only will your digestion be improved, we'll talk about that in a second, but all sorts of other things take place. But if you don't pay attention now, you can't pay attention later.
How about Maimonides?
Why? What did Maimonides say about it?
He has 20 rules, 11 rules, 4 rules, and he said if you don't follow any rules, or one rule only, chew 50 times.
No.
Yes.
He did not say that.
16th century. Wow.
Wow, I have to look that up. Maimonides said, will you repeat the last part? If you follow none of the rules, chew your food 50 times.
And I tried it.
And how did you feel?
Amazing.
Yes.
I tell you,
Yes.
every Friday, my wife would make meatballs.
Yes.
And I always would eat like 5 or 6 of them. And I attended a lecture in my local synagogue on Thursday. The lecturer told me. So I said, let me try to chew it. I couldn't finish chewing one meatball. I was so satiated and full.
Right. Well, meat is harder to eat than it's harder to chew than complex carbohydrates.
It's
But
the experience that was
yes.
transformative.
And it will slow you down. But also, once you start chewing complex carbohydrates, like I said, you'll feel that satisfaction, which protein is actually more digested in the stomach than in the mouth. But I hear what you're saying, and I love it. It's fantastic.
Focusing.
Along with Fletcherizing, Fletcher and his supporters advocated a low-protein diet as a means to health and well-being. By 1919, he died at 69 of bronchitis, but 69 was a ripe old age in 1919. Okay. So, welcome to your mouth. Welcome to your mouth. What's in your mouth? Okay, you have 2 types of saliva. Stimulated saliva. I want you all to imagine biting on a lemon wedge. What happens in your mouth? You secrete saliva. Stimulated saliva is the saliva that comes forward in anticipation of food. Or when you think, like, I want to create some spit. That's stimulated saliva. But the saliva that's just hanging out in your mouth the rest of the day, the thing that coats your teeth, is unstimulated saliva. And it's a bit of a different beast. So stimulated saliva comes from the parotid gland. I can't write. Which is sort of in the back of your cheek. When food arrives at the table and you begin to salivate, that's stimulated. 70 to 90% of, okay, how much saliva do you think you generate in a day? Lots is not an answer. Okay? A cup?
8 cups.
8 cups, which is 2 pints? No, that's 2 quarts.
Gallon.
A gallon.
That's what you drink.
You generate 2 to 3 pints of saliva in a day.
That's quite good.
So almost, well, no, almost 2 quarts. I don't know what that means. It's not half a gallon. So 2 pints is 1 quart, so that's almost 2 quarts. In Taoist medical teaching, stimulated saliva was called the jade juice. Now, were the Chinese into jade or not? Yeah. It's very precious, the jade juice, and it was said to nourish qi. They also said that the jade juice, get this, can't speak. It's your fault to blame it on someone. Michael. The jade juice puts a man beyond the reach of calamities. Puts a man beyond the reach of calamities? What? That's an absurd thing to say. We're going to examine that as we go through this, okay? So let's just keep that Taoist lens of putting a man beyond the reach of calamities. So, in terms of stimulated saliva, which is what you're using on your food, it has a lot of digestive enzymes in it. But just so you know, you can stimulate saliva just by thinking about it. You can even, if you haven't chewed a meal very well, and you'll be able to discern that the more you chew. The more you chew, the more you recognize when you don't chew. Because you don't get the high. So let's say you're in a conversation with someone at a table and they're talking and they're making you talk and it's like, you don't really chew, and you step away from the table and go, I didn't chew. You can actually stimulate saliva and chew your saliva. And you will generate amylase. Amylase doesn't come out early in the game, it comes out later after you've chewed like 30 or 40 times. You get a big spitball full of amylase, and then launch it at the person who made you talk. You get a big spitball of amylase, and then you swallow it, and it retroactively works on the food in your stomach that wasn't chewed. Starts to break it down. So it doesn't get to your gut in this like Fred Flintstone throwing stuff down the quarry.
Is that what it said to chewing gum after a meal?
Chewing gum does not do the same thing because it doesn't cause you to end up with a mouthful of spit. And I will use spit because it's just a fun word. And we all kind of hate spit. You know, it's funny, saliva is one of those like, ugh, saliva. But it's an incredibly important thing. And chewing gum doesn't cause you to accumulate saliva. And that's what we need to do, because through accumulating it and continuing to actually press down, your mouth is fooled into secreting the amylase. But it won't do it with chewing gum. So, the digestive enzyme, God, okay, will someone else please teach this class right now? Amylase. Amylase is the most important digestive enzyme for breaking down carbohydrates. Like I said, it comes out most in your mouth, later in your small intestine, but in lesser amounts. And there's so much going on in your small intestine already. Like your microbiome is trying to digest your food and protect you from environmental toxins and viruses and bad bacteria that don't pin digestion on your small intestine. You should have been doing the work before then. So amylase is so powerful that have you ever been eating pudding and then you take a few bites and you put it back in the fridge? And then the next time you look in, where you took the pudding out, in that depression there's liquid? Does that make sense? That's because the amylase that you reintroduced with your spoon every time has been breaking down the carbohydrate in the fridge. That's why we shouldn't really double dip with the same utensils. Because not because like, ooh, you have cooties, but you're introducing digestive enzyme, which is going to break down the food. Digestive enzymes in general are incredibly interesting and powerful. All laundry detergent started with digestive enzymes. It's the enzymes from pigs' pancreases, and now it's generated from bacteria, like bacteria creating more bacteria. But digestive enzymes are so powerful that protease is used in laundry to break through protein, and lipase is used to break through fats. And amylase, I presume, is in the mix as well. Digestive enzymes are so powerful that the original art restorers used spit. I'm not saying they used their finger and went like that, but that was the original solution used to break through the dirt and the oil on original paintings. Digestive enzymes are so powerful that, where does it say this? Sorry. Well, when someone says they lick their wounds, that comes from the idea that digestive enzymes actually heal wounds. And there's an animal, I think it's rats, for whom their digestive enzyme, oh yeah, saliva is used in folk medicine. Human saliva contains histatins, or histatins, which speed wound closure. So mother kissing a boo-boo is really an echo of a licking of a wound. Rodent saliva contains nerve and growth factors, so when animals lick their wounds, they can actually restore things. Especially rodents are restoring their nervous system with it. So, I just want to see if there's any more stimulated saliva news I have to tell you. If you don't have stimulated saliva, like people who have salivary gland cancer or people who are crystal meth addicts, you ever seen anybody, how does a crystal meth addict's teeth look? Horrible. They're rotting in their mouth because they're not secreting saliva. Crystal meth actually pulls the saliva out of your mouth, like dries you up. You're no longer secreting saliva, and your teeth begin to rot because your saliva is actually repairing your teeth. Let's talk about that. So, unstimulated saliva. Whole different thing. This is the viscous saliva that is on your teeth all the time. It's more elastic and sticky. It forms a protective film that clings to the surface of the teeth. Proteins bind to this saliva, and they bind calcium and phosphate, which goes into your teeth and remineralizes your teeth. So your saliva is constantly keeping your teeth healthy, and in fact, your teeth can get healthier. If your saliva is nice and alkaline and healthy, it's going to continually build your teeth. So, the more you chew, the more saliva you make. It's like lubricating a joint. The more lubricated it is, the more lubricated it stays. and that will continually bind your teeth, fix your teeth. Like I said before, it heals. Unstimulated saliva has anti-clumping properties. And what this does is it breaks up bacteria in the mouth. We're all like, oh, my mouth is so dirty. Your mouth is one of the cleanest places in your body. And oh, I need mouthwash to clean my mouth. Well, mouthwash only targets about half the bacteria in your mouth. But your unstimulated saliva targets all of the bacteria in your mouth. It's antimicrobial. And what it does is it fights the microbes, it stops them from clumping, and then you swallow them, and they'll get killed in your stomach. That's your dental policy, is good quality saliva. You ever been to like Senegal? You know how they brush their teeth in Senegal? And I tell you, the Senegalese have amazingly beautiful teeth. They just have these sticks. There's a special name for them, but they're not even like toothpicks. They're big sticks. And just all day, a cab driver's just like, that's it. That's tooth care. But they're also not eating a Western diet that's constantly introducing sugars on which the bacteria feeds, so you get a huge buildup of bacteria in your mouth, and then you use lousy toothpaste to try and get at that, and then mouthwash, which doesn't really get it, and your whole salivary environment is compromised all day. So unless you're eating incredibly well, your teeth are being harmed by all of those things. The mouthwash is actually washing away the unstimulated saliva. So, one of the more important things about your stimulated saliva, or saliva in general, is that it alkalizes. Oh my God, it's like I didn't wake up from my nap. I'm so sorry.
Chew.
Touche. Touche. Now, in the last 10 years, what have we learned about inflammation? Is inflammation like the thing these days? Does inflammation underlie like almost any major condition, and certainly chronic conditions, chronic inflammation? So how do you get inflamed? What in the food world is something that causes inflammation? Not a specific food, but a quality of foods. Acidity. The more acid your diet, the more inflammation you're prone to. So when I said in Peru, I will chew anything I get my hands on 100 times, even if it's an Oreo cookie, what I knew was that I would convert the Oreo cookie into alkalized saliva. And then it would not behave like an Oreo cookie in my body in the same way. So if you're interested in healing, and your healing is in any way dependent upon alkalizing your body, these days we have these waters that, what's the pH that your blood should be at? 7.4. And you know, we rarely stray too far from this. Your blood will make sure that you stay at 7.4, because if you were to go into what's called acidosis, you would die very quickly. But in order to stay at 7.4, what is your body doing to constantly maintain the alkalinity?
Stealing calcium.
It's stealing calcium from your bones. That, at first it takes it from your blood, then it takes it from its bank account of calcium, which is, in the end, in your bones. So, although your body will behave like it's constantly at 7.4, and you're not going to have a blood test that tells you otherwise, you could be stealing from your bones in order to maintain this. If you're applying your stimulated saliva and chewing things 50 to 100 times, you're alkalizing every single bite you eat, no matter what it is. Chewing can turn poison into food, because there's that much action going on here, both mechanically and chemically.
How about the acidity in our mouth?
Your mouth is alkaline, as far as I know.
So heard the dentist say that a lot of cavities happen because your mouth is 1% more acid than it should be. So alkalizing it is protecting your teeth.
Well, part of why our mouths might err towards acidity is that what happens is food gets caught in there, and then bacteria feeds on the food, and then the bacteria poops out acids. Now, I'm not saying that your mouth may not be more acid than parts of your body. For instance, the vagina is more acid than other parts of the body. But we tip it. I mean, that means the Senegalese mouths are more acid than other parts of their body, but still, the Western diet is going to take that already acid or more acidic environment than the rest of the body and push it way over the cliff, because the bacteria is constantly producing acids that don't need to be there, and that your saliva can handle if you let it. So you're not going to have the buildup if you're constantly creating saliva. All right, so let's talk about some of the benefits of this. I know I've touched upon some of them. Chewing makes real food available. Like I said before, if you're bothering to follow a whole foods plant-based diet and you're not chewing it, you're only doing it halfway. And again, I don't mean being mindful and slowing down. In fact, I don't believe in the slowing down, and I'll tell you why. It is a pain in the butt to shop for and clean and cook and clean up after this food. I don't find it fun or interesting, and I don't particularly want to be all that mindful about it. I just want good food to make me feel well in my life. Now, other people may love cooking, and I am jealous, frankly. But my point is, you're already expending an enormous amount of time and focus in this project. So when, after 3 hours of my day is already devoted to this, then I'm told to pay attention to the barley in your mouth. What I want to do when I'm eating is either talk to a friend, and there is a way of doing that and chewing at the same time, which is you lob a question at your friend, and you get them to answer, and you just chew while they're answering. And vice versa, a long answer, hopefully, not a yes or no question. Tell me about the meaning of your life. Or there's eating alone, and many of us eat some of our meals alone. So if you're eating alone, as far as I'm concerned, watch TV, read the paper, clean your apartment, drive to work. I don't care. Because guess what? When I'm doing those things, sometimes it's actually easier for me to chew. And then I can do that beating of the carbohydrate all the way to those microscopic nutrients, and then I'll actually get the nutrition from them, because they're locked in the polysaccharides, and I'll get double the energy from it, and then the person I am on the other side of it is entirely different. But please, in an effort to make real food available to you, do whatever you need to do. Whether it's sitting down and really paying attention to the barley, that's fine, if you want to do that. If I haven't cooked for myself, I do want to pay attention to the actual eating of it. But like I said, if I've expended so much energy in this direction, I'm not going to punish myself by making myself pay even more attention. I'm here not to have gourmet, fantastically delicious foods every meal. I'm here to live a bigger life. I'm here to be all that I can be. And this chewing is actually a mechanical component to that end. So, this will also improve digestion. If you feel farty, if you feel gassy, if you're one of those people that's like, I can't do cauliflower, I can't do beans, I can't do cabbage, you're not chewing. I have a friend in LA, Ronnie, and Ronnie has real issues with beans, and he actually has H. pylori, so he has difficult, digestion issues in general. And I just, talked to him at length about chewing a couple times. He's a smart guy. He took the advice, and he just goes, I ate beans today, and nothing. Nothing. I promise you, if you're someone who needs Beano or someone who avoids beans, which is a tragedy because they're one of the best things you could put in your body and they're one of the best things for the planet. If you avoid beans because of indigestion, chew your food. They have special sugars in them. They are saccharides in the beans that must be broken down. And if you don't break them down in your mouth, okay, regular foods, a green bean or a grain of brown rice, if you don't break it down in your mouth, it'll hit your small intestine and your small intestine just has to work harder. But if you don't break down a bean or cabbage or a Brussels sprout or a cruciferous vegetable, when it gets to the small intestine, there's a whole gang of special bacteria going, woohoo, she didn't chew, she didn't chew. And then they eat that food for you and they fart. You know, didn't chew, didn't chew. And that's like your punishment for not chewing. But that's why you get farty with the bean. It's because of these special bacteria that love the saccharide in the bean. So no more excuses around that. By the way, how great is good digestion? If you have struggled with digestive issues, you know how important good digestion is. If you've had the good luck of having good digestion your whole life, you may take it for granted. But to be free of stomach aches, of ulcers, of gas, of intestinal distress, of IBS, I mean, even when someone comes to macrobiotics with any sort of colon-related or digestive issue, chewing is the first and most important thing they're meant to do. And suddenly it's like a whole new body. And consider how much we lose of our lives when we don't digest. Think of how many sex lives are compromised by this. And I really mean that. I'm sorry, but as a woman, you just sit there and go, "Not happening tonight." Really? And then not being able to like fall asleep next to the person comfortably, either because he's tooting or you're tooting. It's not good. Think how many babies were not conceived because of bad bean digestion. It's hard to chew? Yes, The Art of Chew. Or, yeah, what was that book in the 70s about love? The Joy of Chew. Yeah, The Joy of Chew. Energy. So when I say it makes real food available, this is the nutrients. Like I said, if you're healing yourself and you're looking for a nutritional healing, you must chew your complex carbohydrates. Now the reason I'm emphasizing the complex carbohydrates is, like I said, amylase is the primary digestive enzyme in the mouth. Proteins and fats are digested more in your stomach. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't chew them, but I know no one eats meat here, okay? But a piece of meat, I've given this lecture to meat eaters, and a piece of meat gets very gamey very quickly and loses all its taste. A complex carbohydrate, and that includes beans. Beans are 75% complex carbohydrate. When you break it down, it actually gets sweeter. And sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. So it's not like, oh, I'm chewing more and it's just getting boring and now it tastes like water. I'm chewing now and it feels like I have candy in my mouth. It gets so sweet because you're unlocking the glucose in your mouth. But you're not going to get the energy from protein or fat in your mouth. So chewing doesn't necessarily affect the amount of energy. Not that you're pulling energy from protein, but you can. You are primarily getting your energy from complex carbohydrates, and they should be your primary source of energy. And anyone who tells you otherwise is delusional. But my point is, when you chew them extremely well, you will find that your physical and mental capacities increase. This again is why I talk about it's not just about mindfulness. For people who just think chewing is about, oh, I just get to have this Zen moment with my barley, there's so much more than that. Don't you want more energy? Don't you want a tool that you can use for the rest of your life until your teeth fall out, but they won't because you're chewing and you're eating good food, that when you're at the retirement home, you're the one playing you know, playing bocce, and you're the one that won't stop talking, and, you know, you're the one they gossip about because you're having sex with all the men. It's an amazing tool to have. And then it costs nothing. Nothing. You could do it in prison, and you could do it as Bill Gates. It is the great equalizer to have this capacity in our bodies. A marathon runner could do it, and someone in a wheelchair could do it.
How does liquid affect all this?
Well, liquid doesn't really affect amylase because amylase gets stimulated by chewing. So unlike stomach, well, and I don't know how stomach enzymes work, frankly, but you could take water in between chewing and you're going to dilute what's down here, but you're not going to compromise your amylase because amylase needs this action in order to do it. You can, just like Lino's father, actually chew water, and the water becomes more alkaline, and as you send it down, it has a retroactive effect on the food that you've eaten. So water shouldn't get in the way. Now, other liquids that contain carbohydrates in them, like soups or smoothies or juices, yeah, if I'm being hardcore about it, I would say chew your smoothie. Your smoothie has tons of fiber in it. It's completely chewable. Chew your juice, that's a little harder, but you could definitely chew a soup. Let's talk about what's easy to chew and what isn't. A whole grain or a vegetable, easy to chew, practice on those, okay? Even whole grain bread or whole grain pasta. If you really concentrate, you'll be able to chew on those relatively easily. Now, more like fruit dissolves very quickly in your mouth. It's hard to get like chewing purchase on a piece of fruit or anything with a sweetener in it. It just starts to degrade really easily. It gets digested very quickly in the mouth. So don't practice on those and just give yourself a break around them. You know, after you've chewed this for like 20 minutes, it will be easier to apply amylase to fruit, but in general, it's not that easy. And then liquids, of course, harder. I want to give you, well, I'll do that in a second.
Back to the question of liquids.
Yes.
Some people say that drinking while eating is not good, may be that it dilutes the amylase and the alkaloids.
Yeah, they say it dilutes your digestive enzymes. I don't think it's so much doing it in the mouth as that it's hitting the stomach and it's digesting any enzymes that are at work in the stomach. But it's not actually going to impact your mouth's capacity to produce amylase.
Right, but it dilutes its impact on the stomach.
It may, yeah. Yeah. Satisfaction. Now, I talked about satisfaction earlier, my recovery from an eating disorder, feeling satisfied. But I just want to drive home the importance of satisfaction, period. Because you don't just experience physical satisfaction after you chew, you experience emotional, mental, and spiritual satisfaction. Satisfaction is like coming to a point and going, I'm good. We live in a culture that's all about never feeling that feeling. All of advertising is based on never letting you feel that feeling and having you chase the illusion of that feeling. We get divorces from that feeling. We buy houses from that feeling. We ask for raises from that feeling. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't grow and develop as individuals. That's one thing. To be in a constant state of craving and dissatisfaction is another. So I'll work with people and they're like, well, they're not this, they're not this, they're not this, and I just go, chew your food. This is probably what Maimonides was saying. Just get over yourself and chew your food, and you'll have a spiritual awakening. You'll actually land in your body, on your feet, and go, whoa, I'm here. And guess what? I'm all good. Don't we go to yoga for that feeling? Don't we meditate for that feeling? Don't we fall in love in the weird hope that that person will eventually produce that feeling? And when they stop producing it after like date number 6, then we chase them for it for the rest of the relationship. And we're like, you're not right, let's change you. Let's just, no, because don't say it that way. Ugh. Because I'm dissatisfied. But my dissatisfaction is biological and it's personal. And when I chew and I land in my body on my feet and go, I'm okay, guess what? You're okay too. I'm not going to judge you. I'm fine. People who are fine don't judge other people. So this is big and it's radical. And it may actually alter your relationship to your whole life when you see that you don't have to chase anything ever. Weight loss. So if you've ever done the chewing yourself just as an experiment in your life, you know that you eat about 50% of what you normally eat. And it takes way longer. So by the end of a meal, you're just done with food. It's like, could food be over now, please? And you leave half your plate of food and you walk away with more energy than you had.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please. Mrs. Deborah Ann Cornelius, I repeat, Deborah Ann Cornelius, and Mrs. Sandra Clubb, I repeat, Mrs. Sandra Clubb. Mrs. Jacqueline Francis Mully, repeat, Jacqueline Francis Mully, and Mayuko Nakashima, repeat, Mayuko Nakashima, and Mr. Roger Mully, I repeat, Mr. Roger Mully, and Mr. Timothy Alec Mully. I repeat, Timothy Alec Mully. Are kindly requested to contact the guest service desk on deck 5 or to call 99. Thank you.
They did a study in China. Colin Campbell was not involved. It didn't matter whether the men in the study were obese or lean, they all consumed roughly 12% fewer calories when they chewed each bite 40 times than when they chewed it 15 times. And they exhibited lower levels of ghrelin, which is the so-called hunger hormone produced in the stomach. So I think that's a mild set of results, frankly. Only, what did they say, 12% less food? Yeah, to me, when I chew, it's at least 30% less food, if not 40%. But imagine and consider how much money this country spends on the dieting and weight loss industry. I mean, this is a huge thing. These are problems that plague people's, not only their lives, but their peace of mind, their quality of life, and the qualities of lives of their children. And one of the answers, and I say it's a big one, is in proper mastication. Now, if you're trying to chew, and you sit down and you start wolfing your soup, and then you go, oh, damn, I'm not chewing, I screwed up, Jessica told me to chew, let's just finish this meal. Nuh-uh-uh-uh-uh. I encourage you to chew like this. First of all, when you approach a meal and you're very hungry, it will be difficult to chew. So wolf your first third of your meal. That's fine. Be mindful and relaxed and enjoy the second third of your meal, because you will have slowed down, because some food will be at that point hitting, you know, all the bells and whistles. Chew the last third of your meal. And chew it, at this point, I would try 50 times a mouthful. But I want you to aim at 100 times a mouthful. It will be difficult at first. This is counterintuitive. And I have some tips for you. One is, don't eat with anybody. Get a divorce. No, one of the tips is to lean forward at first, because you're so conditioned to swallow as soon as there's food in your mouth. How many times do you think you actually chew? Anyone here think they chew more than 10 times a mouthful? Yeah, it's rare. I was talking to the woman who's the pastry chef here on the ship, and she said she sat and observed people chewing once at a food court, and she said it depended on the food, but like some foods it's like 3, 4, and then you're done. There's a great book called Gulp. A Journey Down the Alimentary Canal by this woman named Mary Roach. And Mary Roach is an investigative journalist, and she's very funny. And she talks all about everything from the teeth to the saliva to chewing to your esophagus down, everything until you're pooping. Everything about the digestive tract. And it's fascinating. But what's interesting is that she talks about Horace Fletcher. And she says there was this guy, Fletcher, who was crazy into chewing. And it was all the rage, and it was just this big fat, and what an idiot. And I thought, how dare you, Mary Roach? You're an investigative journalist with teeth and with a parotid gland. I can't believe you didn't actually try this. And clearly she didn't, because she made fun of it. But I want you to do that. So, you lean forward, because you're so conditioned not to, that this way will keep the food in the front of your mouth and you will continue to apply saliva to it. You know when you take a sip of wine, just to taste it, you close the back of your throat. You don't permit a swallow. You're just, That's what you're going to do with food. So you put the food in your mouth, you close the back.
Could you repeat the 1/3?
Wolf the first third, enjoy the second third, and chew the third third. And what really helps as well is to have some sort of pickle, whether it's an olive or a dill pickle or ginger pickle or umeboshi plum, something that's salty. If you put it in with your food, just a tiny amount, like half the size of your pinky fingernail, if you add that to the food, you will automatically secrete stimulated saliva. So start with that. Start with a little bit of salt involved. And then your saliva gets going, head is tip forward. And sure, if you swallow after 15 chews, bravo, that's better than 3. You've like quintupled the national average. But I want you to keep going until you get to 50. And then like I said, when you hit 50, go to 100. But at 50, you should start to experience some of the results. One of the things that happens is that you relax, and you actually go from your sympathetic nervous system to your parasympathetic nervous system. And you'll notice that your belly relaxes like Buddha, and you start to breathe differently. You fall into a different relationship with your body.
Is that why pickles are introduced to foods?
They're certainly considered, pickles are considered appetizers, like appetite, and probably because they get you to salivate. Yeah, I never thought of that. But they're also really good because they set up your microbacteria in your gut. They're applying gut flora, so you're literally swallowing digestive bacteria.
One more. How is wine interfering with the saliva?
Wine?
Yeah.
Well, I would say alcohol in general dehydrates. So it's not going to help with your salivary production, frankly.
One of the pleasures is drinking wine with food.
Yeah, I would experiment yourself. Start to do the chewing so you know the chewing high, and then you'll know the degree to which wine interferes with it or doesn't. I would say just intuitively, first of all, the times that I eat wine, what happened to my brain? Who stole my brain in room 9143? When I drink wine, I'm generally out with other people, and it's a social situation, and I'm not concentrating on chewing in the first place. So I haven't really tried to put them together. Okay, and finally, when I said it alkalizes, consider these conditions as being based on acidity. So these are conditions that people walk around with, people live with, they consider just sort of like, poof, bad luck got me and suddenly I have this condition. When chances are they've never been chewing in their life and their food is being broken down by digestive enzymes past their amylase and it never alkalizes properly. Acne, asthma, all autoimmune diseases, chronic prostatitis.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please? Mrs. Mali Jacqueline Francis and Mrs. Nakashima Mayuko I repeat, Mrs. Male Jacqueline Francis and Mrs. Nagashima Mayuko, and Mr. Male Roger, Male Timothy, I repeat, Male Roger and Male Timothy are kindly requested to contact the guest service desk on deck number 5 or call 99. Thank you.
Chronic prostatitis, hypersensitivities, inflammatory bowel disease, pelvic inflammatory disease, rheumatoid arthritis, transplant rejection, vasculitis, cystitis, atherosclerosis, allergies, myopathies, and cancer, all related to an acid condition that we can treat in our mouths. So finally, and thank you so much for your patience with all of my brain farts, because clearly I didn't chew lunch well enough, and I blame Hi and Carol from Illinois for making me talk. They were lovely. When it's said that the jade juice puts a man beyond the reach of calamities, I think there's two levels to that. One is that you'll notice when you chew that you become incredibly physically, hold on a second, physically coordinated. You may feel off balance during the day at times. Chew your food and you will not experience balance issues unless you have a problem literally in parts of your brain. But more than that, our problems are things that very often aren't happening in front of us. In other words, we might have a problem at work, but then we go home and we carry the problem from work over here somewhere, and we're constantly chewing on it because we didn't chew our food. Or we have kids and they live in Toledo and they live in Los Angeles and we're in Chicago, and we worry about them and we carry them in our aura, and we're constantly have these little knots, energy knots, in our consciousness, and these are our problems. When you chew, and everything you eat is liquid, it comes to your body in a liquid form, you begin to have liquid consciousness. Your brain behaves totally differently when your sustenance is coming in as liquid. Now, I don't mean a juice and I don't mean a smoothie, because you haven't actually digested them properly. This liquid is full of amylase, so it's behaving exactly the way it's supposed to behave in your body, going to your brain efficiently and perfectly. And those knots, and you realize you can only do what you can do where you are. And that if there isn't a problem in front of you, you don't really have any problems. Because when you want to apply yourself to one of your problems, you do. And when you don't, you let it go. It's like being in a constant meditative state of letting go. So the jade juice taking a man beyond the reach of calamity means that we live different lives than we would if we don't chew. And if you have a spiritual practice, you become so much more easily connected to your source. So much more easily connected that your intuition gets strong and the next move on your path becomes undeniable. I do this because I'm turned on by it, because I need to be reminded, because this does so much for me that reminding you gets me to do it yet again. Question back there.
What jade juice? Is that gastric juice?
No, the jade juice is what the Taoists, the ancient Chinese medicine guys, called saliva. They called it the jade juice. Jade, as in the green emerald.